Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to this TaxCalc webinar, Onboarding to Execution, Best Practice for TaxCalc Practice Management. My name is Martin Davey. I'm the Product Director for TaxCalc's Practice Management products, and I'll be taking you through the webinar today, where we hope that you will discover how to standardise processes for onboarding new clients, monitor the activity within your practice with live dashboards and work management tools, automate your requests for client records and track work through to deadline, and uncover tools and features already at your disposal. So the webinar, we hope will last about 45 minutes. We'll be running a couple of polls at the start of the session, so please do get involved with those when they come up. The polls will show in the tab in the bottom right-hand corner of your screen, and you should see a little red dot pop up when they're made available, but I will be prompting you through the webinar when we're going to take those. Feel free to use the chat for general conversation. I know in previous webinars, our audience generally like to use the chat. But if you do have any questions, specific product questions, then please do use the dedicated questions panel. I'm flying solo here today, but my colleague Dean will be monitoring the questions remotely, answering those that he can, but any that can't be answered we'll be picking up after the webinar and shortly after the event finishes. So I think that's the formalities out of the way. We've a lot to cover in the webinar today, so I think we'll get started. I just wanted to kick things off with a question that I'm sure many of you have been asked before, but often the answer changes quite regularly, or people simply say, I just don't know. So what is practice management? Now, we're not going to go into a long debate on this today. We could be here all day, but our experiences show that it often means different things to different practices, depending on what is important to that practice at that time. It can often mean different things to different people within the same practice, which again can sometimes cause issues and does change over time. That being said, for most of us, there's often a general perception of what practice management is to them. So I mentioned some interaction. So here's our first poll for you. So as I mentioned, this will come up down in the bottom right-hand corner of your screen. So our first poll, what do you currently see as the primary functions of practice management with respect to your firm? So here we want you to tick all that apply. There's 6 options here. So have a little think, and we'll give you a minute or so to take part in our poll. So we've got keeping on top of deadlines and tasks, maintaining a database of clients and their details, recording and tracking client interactions, monitoring productivity, automating tasks and driving efficiency, storing and managing client documentation. So again, we'll give you a few minutes to see the results there. So it's still coming through, so I'm going to give you a few more minutes to answer. So we're looking at the moment, so maintaining a database of clients and their details, 24%, keeping on top of deadlines and tasks, 23%. So they're kind of look like the 2 key priorities. It's got a good spread through the others though. So with practice management, as we said, means different things to different people, and we're seeing here, I think with these functions, that actually covers a good breadth of what the practice needs. So I think we're seeing the results just close off now. So we'll just leave that for another couple of seconds. Okay, so as I said, it's often a difficult question to answer. However, it's a good idea to make sure everyone in your practice is aligned. I mentioned at the beginning that different people in different practices sometimes feel that practice management means different things. So maybe after the webinar today, might be good for you to have a chat with your colleagues, ask them the same question, and see what response you get between you. Maybe might highlight some things that you need to think about within your practice. Okay, so we've seen what's important to you, but what do you currently use to support those functions? Okay, so what tools do you use? So here's our second poll for you. So here we're looking for which one of the following do you primarily use to meet the core needs of managing your practice. So here we're just looking for one option. This is obviously the core tool that you use out of the choices that we've got there on screen. So again, we'll give you a few seconds to get your answers in on there. Okay, so we've got spreadsheets, 48%, TaxCalc, which is a good number. We've got 25 to 30% coming through on there. So a lot of you on the webinar today, obviously using TaxCalc. We've got a smaller number for the other options in there. We've got 8% for nothing. But spreadsheets, which maybe isn't so much of a surprise. A lot of accountants we speak to are still using spreadsheets for primary practice management functions, for managing their work and so on. So very interesting. But again, a reasonable spread between tools and spreadsheets. And as I said, practices themselves often try and find the best thing to help them, depending on what their priorities are at that point. So we'll let that run just for another few seconds. Okay, so it really is down to a number of factors, what a practice will implement, and what works for one doesn't necessarily work for somebody else. Really is a case of finding what works for you and what your priorities are, and often that can change over time. Okay, so even knowing what practice management means and what tools you use and knowing what tools are available to you, we know that there are still a number of problems that accountants face. So problems that you might have. So setting up a new client on multiple systems is time-consuming and prone to error. Not knowing the status of all client work. Spending a lot of time progressing the work manually to keep it up to date. The risk of missing a deadline. And not maximising the use of technology at your disposal, especially when you're using multiple systems. Okay, so I'm sure that you are familiar with some or all of these. And as you can see, it covers a breadth of your day-to-day work. So from onboarding, managing your client data, managing the work for your client, and getting to grips with, again, all of the technology that you may have in your office, in your practice. And a lot of practices these days refer to a tech stack and different technology that they're using. Hopefully our session today will give you some valuable insight to take away on how TaxCalc can help you with some of these problems or all of these problems. Okay, so it's now time to jump into TaxCalc, but I just want to set the scene just before we jump into the demonstration. So today, I'm an accountant, I'm starting my day, it's, let's say, 9 AM in the morning. I met a prospect at the end of the day yesterday, and I know I need to get that client processed into the system. But I've also been in and out of the office over the last few days, so I know that I need to check up on my work, make sure I've got everything in hand and that I'm on top of everything. Okay, so we're going to jump into TaxCalc and we'll start our demonstration. So as I say, I had a chat with a prospect at the end of the day yesterday, and I need to get them onto this system. This was a limited company, and I know that with a limited company, I can grab that information from Companies House. Firstly, that makes setting up the client pretty quick and efficient, but it also makes sure that I've got the most relevant data that is publicly available for that client at this time. So I'm going to jump into Create Client. I'm going to go to Limited Company. And I'm going to use the Search Companies House option. And I'm going to search for a client. So this will pick up any client that's registered at Companies House and is on the Companies House system. I'm going to pop in a code, and we're going to create that client. So this brings us up into the Companies House Sync Wizard, and this allows us to import any information that we want to bring in from Companies House. We don't have to do it all at the same time. We can come back to this later on, but just for demonstration purposes, I'm going to sync the basic client information. Just going to quickly answer that we don't want this pop-up to come up. So we sync the client information, including particular dates. We're going to go down and we're going to sync our SIC codes. We're going to sync our registered office. We're going to jump into our directors. So just for demonstration purposes, we can see here we've got 3 directors, each with a service address. We just pop through. So I'm just going to pop into Nick. and we're going to create that relationship and the client within the system. And then I'm going to finish and open. If I had more time, then I would go through and potentially sync the other directors. But for now, hopefully you get the idea of the information that you can import and how quick and simple that is. So that takes us into our simple step client record. And we're just going to start with, work through the menu on the left-hand side, focus on certain particular areas of the menu where time can be saved. We'll skip over some of the options down here because I'm sure, especially those who do use TaxCalc currently, will be familiar with a lot of the options that we've got here. So intercompany information. First thing we're just going to do is add a logo. So this is an option we have for you to get some branding onto your financial statements, onto the front cover of your financial statements. So I'm just going to pop down. I'm just going to pop a logo. So that will allow me then to get some branding onto my financial statements I send through from the client. We can see here we've got the name, we've got the registered number, and we've got the dates that came through from Companies House. So I don't need to enter that. I don't need to worry about entering the wrong information at this stage on the basic information we have for the client. We've got tax information, Companies House information, and business information, all fairly standard, so I'm not going to cover those through the demonstration today. Contact information, we can see here that we've already got our registered office that has been imported from Companies House through the sync that we've just done. But it is important when we're creating clients for TaxCalc products, specifically Communication Centre, that we have an email address. So I'm just going to enter an email address here. So the email address I'm using is a Gmail account that I'm then going to use later on in the demonstration. So I'm going to use the same email for various things in here, but just so I can take you to that email and show you the interactions that we have. If we don't have an email at this stage, not too much of a problem. There are prompts within the system when an email is required for you to be able to add that in. You can obviously enter any other addresses that you want at this stage. If you want a service address for an individual, then that will come through on this screen as well. We have bank details that we could enter. Again, we'll skip over that, and we're going to jump into engagement. So this is an important part of the client creation process. The first thing I'm going to do is select this. So at this stage, I'm still going through the onboarding process with the client. So I'm going to set this as new, and that will not only give me a couple of prompts at the end of client creation, which we'll come to in a second, but I can also filter some client lists, and I can monitor these clients separately to my active clients that are already in the system. So it allows me to segregate those and deal with those in an independent way. There's a few important fields down here that we normally encourage people to use. So we'll just go through those now. The first one is our portfolio group. So if you have client managers or your partner in your firm manages a set of clients, then we can add the particular portfolio manager onto the client, and that will allow you again to filter lists and find clients and manage clients that are those that you deal with much easier than if you had everything in one pool of clients. If you do have multiple offices, we're able to select the office, and again we can then filter our clients by office. We can select the bookkeeping tool that they use, so I'll choose Excel. That on our poll that we just had was the most popular kind of use for practice management, so we use that for our bookkeeping option here. And method of payment, again, we should make a choice, so we choose direct debit. The last two, so with bookkeeping software and method of payment, data mining that we have in TaxCalc, which again I'll come to later on in the demonstration, they allow us to be able to, again, to segregate the client lists and find clients with those particular settings on them. That allows us to then communicate with them through Comm Centre or contact them through other means. We also have some custom fields down here. We're just going to pop some information into. Again, I'm just going to use the same email account that I just used before. Again, that's for demonstration purposes. And these custom fields have been created in admin. Again, I'll show you how we do those a little bit later on. But for this purpose that we've got here, this is going to allow me to then contact that previous accountant and request information from them because I now have a record of their details. We can create custom fields for many things. And again, I'll show you that a little bit later. We could then go through into consent management. We've mentioned about targeting lists and contacting accountants and clients based on whether it be the bookkeeping software they use or the service that you provide. Generally, what you need to do is make sure you have consent. And this is just a way within TaxCalc where we can create a new consent record We can say, yes, they've given us consent either by email or by phone, and we can contact them when we're supposed to, rather than obviously if we haven't previously got consent. I'm not going to go through that in too much detail just now, but this is where we would enter the option for consent. We're going to jump into services, and we're going to add in the services that we provide for this client. So I'm just going to pop some details in here just quickly for now. Not going to worry too much about the fee. I know obviously the fees, some will be looking and just questioning the fees that we add in, but we're just going to pop some fees in quickly. Do that. Okay, and the main reason for just a choice here is we just wanted to identify. So once we've created our services, we've added the services in that we're providing for the client. We select save. So we've got one service here that hasn't got a default job template allocated through the service in admin. So job templates allow us to get some form of consistency in how we're managing that work. We can have stages within those jobs, and that makes sure that all of our members of staff follow the same set of steps through each item of work that we're performing. With our VAT here, we haven't got a job template defaulted, so when we then activate that job, we may end up with a member of staff who goes down a slightly different route and has slightly different stages to what we would normally expect. So as part of the demonstration today, we're not going to dig too deep into templates, but it's just something to watch out for if you don't have the templates and you're using Practice Manager Plus allocated to the service, that could mean that people are doing different things within the practice. Okay, so working down the left-hand side again. Anti-money laundering, again, this is almost a session in itself. So we're not going to spend too much time on here, but I just wanted, as part of client creation, because it is important that we do the relevant AML checks, not just an identity check that you could maybe do through our AML ID check-in service with Equifax. You really should be gathering information from your client and doing a proper due diligence on a know your client basis with your client. So from here, we can create a client record. I'm just going to quickly pop some details in. Like I say, I'm not going to dwell on this too much because this is a lot of information to cover. We're just going to quickly pop down some options we've got on here. You can see the information's come through from Practice Management. And what we can do here is we can pop in some extra information that we haven't got within the client record in Practice Manager. So we just say, yes, we've got evidence and a certificate. We're going to select Add. Yes, we've got a certified copy. I'm going to browse. And we can pop in the incorporation certificate, which is just a link to the file, that file being stored on your system. And then we could pop down to nature of business. We could add in more information about what that company does. We can see we've got the services pulled through from Practice Manager. We see we've got the relationships, which we could then do due diligence on the individual directors and their spouses and so on. So that's just a quick whistle-stop tour of identification. But what we can see here, we've closed it. We don't need to complete that just at this stage, but it has created the record on the client record for us to come back to at a later stage. And I'm just going to quickly pop in, again, from a risk assessment perspective. So again, it's not just about CDD and client due diligence. We should, unless our policies suggest for certain clients that we don't need to do a risk assessment, we should be doing periodic risk assessments, maybe on a yearly basis, but definitely a periodic basis to make sure that we're happy with the risk of the client, that they're low risk to us. So again, we're just going to quickly pop in. I'm just going to show you very, very quickly. So if we answer some questions on here, so no, they're not a PEP. And yes, they're local. So we'll just answer a couple. We'll pop to our conclusion, and we can see based on our risk assessment and our questions that we're answering, we get a score, and we can make a conclusion on what this has given us, whether they're high risk or not. I'll just pop back quickly to the risk profile. And for a particularly exposed person, if I say yes, you can see that it comes up as high. And if I pop to my conclusion again, I can see that it is high risk, and that gives us some other options for enhanced due diligence if we did need to do that. So just change that back to no. So that's just gone back. So again, I'm not going to complete that here, but just to give you an idea of the type of process that can be done with AML Centre, but that's basically part of your client creation process. Okay, so again, just skipping down the menu on the left-hand side, we could do an electronic identity check as part of the client due diligence if we wanted to. I'm going to pop to our relationships. We can see here we haven't had to enter the relationship at this stage. This has been imported from Companies House. We've just got the one director. You saw previously that we did have 3 that we could have imported and they would have come through here. And this is there when we would create additional relationships, whether it be a shareholder. This is a limited company. If we wanted to add some shares in, again, just for the demonstration, I'm not going to add those in just now, but this is where we would add the shareholder and the shares for the company. We're going to jump down to active work. So this is now a follow-on from our services that we're providing for that client. And we're going to pop to activate job. And we can see the services that we've got here for the client. So again, we're just going to do one service here just to show you how this works. So we're popping onto our screen and we're just going to step through. We're going to create the work for the client. Okay, create the work and we're going to continue. So we see we've got a template that we use, so our job is already populated. We've already populated with an assignee. We've got our dates picked up from our work, so we're not having to do too much at this stage. We can see that we've got individual tasks, so individual stages that are going to be managed from that job. So we can see here, send year-end reminder to client. We've got records received, we've got prepare accounts, review accounts, and so on. So we have our stages, which means at this point, everyone within the practice will be following the same sequence of steps for each of the clients and each of the jobs that we're working on. So again, just for now, I'm just going to finish. I'm going to untick that one. It's just going to finish the job. I could do the other two, activate the other two jobs, but just for now, for time constraints, I'm just going to skip and close that down. But what I am going to do as part of this onboarding process, and obviously I mentioned right at the beginning that this is about onboarding our client, is I want to create a job for onboarding. So this is to make sure that we cover the stages of the onboarding process. So I'm going to say yes to use a template, and I'm going to choose my onboarding template. So I'm then going to continue. Just going to skip through. So again, we can see, so this is by default assigned to me. I manage all the clients and their onboarding process. So these automatically get assigned to me. Not going to give a deadline at this stage. Obviously, you could do if you needed to, but this is a process we generally follow pretty quickly. But most importantly, we can see we've got our stages. So we need to send the engagement letter terms to the client. We need to contact the previous accountant, create online account for them, AML checks, and so on. So we've got our stages again in here that we can then work through. So I've created the job for the client, and we're just going to finish off the client creation, and then we're going to come back to that onboarding process in a second. We're going to turn on automation for this client. So I want to automatically generate a request for records for each year. So just after the year end, this will then generate an email for me in Comm Centre, and I can then get that email sent out and get those records in really quickly so I can get started on their work. We can link to Document Manager. We are going to cover Document Manager in our demonstration today, but I'm not going to go through the linking on here, but this is where we would link them. And then we jump down to finish, and then finish and save. So because we set the engagement status to new, this is recognised as a new client, so it's given us a couple of prompts, or a prompt at the end with a couple of options. So we're just going to select Run on here. The first is an engagement letter, so it allows us to generate that through the use of mail merge. We have a choice of letters in here. These are our defaults, but with mail merge, you can create your own mail merge templates to be whatever you want them to be. You could add your engagement letter and your terms and so on within the same document, or you could have them separate. Just for now, I'm going to cancel here because I've got one that I've preset for the demonstration that I'm going to use later on. But you would select this, generate that, and that would open in Word and allow you to view and manage that engagement letter for that particular client. We're just going to click on cancel, and you can see behind we've had the 64A automatically open. And again, for you guys, not going to go through the nuances of a 64A. I'm sure you're particularly happy with that. But just to show you, we can jump to finish, and we can then finish this online. We can add it to an e-sign envelope, and we could do that at this stage if we did want to. Again, for now, I'm just going to close that down on here. We'll assume that we've been through that process and we've completed that for the client. Okay, So that's client creation. So we can see that using Companies House has sped things up for us. We've got accurate data from Companies House. And the simple step process on the left-hand side has allowed us to work through a sequence of steps to get as much information from that client as we can and make sure that we're happy with the information that we have. So just as a follow-up, I'm going to drop onto our dashboards. So if you notice, a lot of TaxCalc users, especially those maybe who are new into our practice, don't immediately know that the dashboards are there. We've got the option down here on the right-hand side. So we're going to bring up our dashboards. I'm on my own dashboard, which I'm going to come back to shortly. So first of all, I'm just going to jump to a client onboarding dashboard. So this is a separate dashboard that I've set up, which is made as a public dashboard. So anyone within the practice can see this. And this allows me to see any clients that are on a stage or have a job open for client onboarding, and also allows me to see the clients that are set as new. So again, we saw that a second ago of how we can differentiate between a new client and an active client. So this is a set of widgets that can be used generally for those tasks that maybe are assigned to me that I have on my own dashboard. But here we've just got it filtered to show the activity type for client onboarding specifically. So it strips out all of the other work and just focuses on onboarding itself. So I'm going to select the job and just show you here, just in terms of the stages that we just saw when we were creating the job. So sending an engagement letter, contacting a previous accountant, so on and so forth. And some of these options, obviously, we've been through as part of the client creation process. So we have our stages that we know we need to follow through. But what I'm going to do is work through some of those stages. So I'm going to spend the time to just step through those stages with you. So the first one of those was to send an engagement letter to a client. So we're going to pop into eSign Center. We're going to go to Create New Envelope. We're going to scroll down. We found our client that we've got here. And we're going to pop in just something. The name that you have on the envelope is used within the email that is sent through to the client. So this does need to be relevant. I've just typed in something quickly just for now, but do just be mindful that what you type in here will go through to the client. We go to recipients. So we've got Nick Smith. Again, if I'd have previously imported multiple directors, then I would have had them listed here. We've got Nick Smith, and we can then choose whether they're a signer or a watcher. So in this case, I've only got one recipient, so I'm going to select signer. But what I could do is add in myself as a watcher. So I could go through and choose any member of staff within the practice. We could add them as a user, and I could add myself as a watcher. And that means that I'll then receive a signed copy of the document once the signing chain is completed. Just for now, I'm going to select Do Not Send, but that will allow us to receive that if we did want to as part of the signing process. You can see here that I haven't got an email address for Nick Smith. And I mentioned earlier about email addresses being important for Comms Center, but also for eSign Center. So I can select to edit. And again, I'm just going to enter the same email address that I'm using for the demonstration, but that just allows me to save that at this stage. If I haven't entered that for whatever reason, I can enter it at this point. I've also then got reminders down the bottom. So this is not necessarily an urgent document that I'm sending through to the client to sign. I could ask them for a reminder after 24 hours if I wanted to, but I'm just going to choose 7 days for now. And I'm going to pop down to Manage Documents, and I'm going to upload my engagement letter. So I mentioned previously that I had generated this. So just for time purposes, just to make it a little bit quicker through the demonstration. So I've got my document, and I can see here, here's my engagement letter. So I've got my services and my fees. Scroll down, so here's where we're going to add the signing areas in a second, but you can see down here I've got my terms and conditions and so on within the same document. So this is going to go through to the client, but we want them to sign. So we're going to pop in the signing areas just quickly, so the signature and the date, and we're going to go down to check and finish. So everything is all done. So we're happy, and we're going to send that envelope through. So hopefully in a few seconds, there we go. So that's been sent through. Now, as part of this particular step, I'm not going to go through the signing process as if I was the client. I'll cover that just a little bit later on as part of the demo when we go through another step. But that would have sent an email through to the client, and they could then sign that from wherever they are on whatever device they happen to be able to access that email from. But again, we'll cover that a little bit later on. Okay, So I'm going to pop back to our dashboard. Again, we're just going to quickly pop into the job. So we sent our engagement letter off. We're hoping that obviously will come back signed fairly shortly. The next step, so we want to contact the previous accountant. We need to get that information from the previous accountant, make sure that we should be acting for this client, that there aren't any strange circumstances that we need to be aware of. If there aren't, then importantly, we get the other information that we need to start the work for the client. So what I'm going to do to start with is pop into Practice Manager. I'm going to go down to Report Manager, and I'm going to go down to Professional Inquiry Status. So this is a custom report that I've created, and this is using the custom fields that you saw on the client record previously. So I'm going to run this report, and this is saying, there's a Datamine in here that's saying, give me a report for all of my clients that have the Professional Inquiry Status set as no. So that's the first thing that it's given me. And the columns on here that I've determined, obviously standard client information, but then we've got the information again from the custom fields that I'd added into the client record. So I can see I've just got one client where I've not done that status for, and I know that because obviously I've just created the client. So I'm just going to drill down into the client from here. I'm going to pop into engagement, and I can see the details that we entered earlier on. So I'm going to grab the email address from here, and I'm going to go to the client record, and I'm going to go to send client message. So this is using Communication Center. So immediately from the client record, I can jump into an email. I'm going to copy in the previous accountant's email address. I'm going to leave the client's email address in there because what this will do is save a copy of this communication onto the client record, and it will send a copy to that client so that they can see that we've requested that information and that they've given permission for us to do that. We're going to select who we're going to send it from. And within Communication Center, we have email templates, similar to mail merge with letter templates. So I've created a template for a professional inquiry. So that means that I don't have to type this all up again, which again saves me time. I'm just going to get rid of the reference for now. We could have a reference in there if we wanted to. But if we scroll down, we can see we've got just a templated list of items. We could get rid of some of those if we don't feel they're appropriate. We've got a little statement at the bottom here that mentions that the previous accountant is going to receive another email, and that email is going to ask them to log into our document management portal, where they'll have access, so guest access, to a particular folder that they're able to then upload that information into. And I'll show you that in a couple of seconds. So we pop into preview message, and again we quickly scroll down, and we can see here we've got our signature all signed off. And if we did have any additional tokens in here, so we've got business name, then we could choose our client, and that will pop the information in here. So we could just preview that if we wanted to. And then we're just going to send that through. So that's now gone off to the previous accountant, and hopefully they then receive that and are able to action it. So we're just going to switch our hats slightly. So we're now the previous accountant, and we've just received that request. So I'm going to pop into our email here. You can see we've got a few emails. So I mentioned I was using the same email address for the different parts of the demo. The first one that I mentioned on the email was that they were going to receive another email asking them to provide themselves access to the portal, to our document management portal. So that's this email here. They would click on the link, and that would then allow them to sign in. I've already got that signature set up, so we'll come to that in a second. And then we've got our professional inquiry on here. And this is the email that we just sent through. We can see on here, so we've got the statement that I mentioned, and that was the email that they received. So they know that they need to go and look for that other email and then come through and add the documents. So we're going to log in as if we were the previous accountant. So as I mentioned, this is guest access to a particular folder on our client vault. So this doesn't allow them to manage or see anything else for that client, just a particular folder that they can pop into. So we're just going to pop into here, into our correspondence folder, into previous accountant, and then we can upload whatever files we want to upload as the previous accountant from here. So just for now, just to make things really quick, so if we said we wanted working papers, and then I would say that I'll just do one file. Obviously, a previous accountant is likely to need to upload a number of files, but we've just got the ability there to add our files in. We then get notified that that information has then been passed through, and we can then go and action on that. So a really quick and simple way of being able to obtain that information that's not through an email or other means. We can get that information straight into our vault, and we can action that as soon as we need to. Okay, so I'm going to jump back to TaxCalc, and then I'm going to go back to my dashboard. So our client job, if we go to update again, so we've sent our engagement letter. Again, we'll assume that we've received that back from the client. We've contacted the previous accountant. We've got the information. We're happy that there's no reason we shouldn't act for the client. We've done our AML checks. We've done our 64.8. We've done all of the other things on here. So we're perfectly happy we can onboard that client. So all I'm going to do just for now, just for completeness, I'm just going to change the status manually and update, and just do a quick refresh, just again for showing now that we can drop that job off of our list. Our dashboard gets updated. We know that's done, and we can then carry on with our day. So hopefully that's shown you from an onboarding process the steps that we can go through. We've used Communication Center, we've used Document Manager, we've used eSign Center, and we've used Practice Management and Practice Manager Plus to get that client onboarded within a short amount of time, hopefully a few hours, depending on the checks that you need to do. Okay, so I mentioned earlier that that was my first task, but now I've been away for a few days. I just need to make sure I know where I am with all of my work. So I'm going to pop back to my dashboard. So I've got it here as a quick link. I'm just going to quickly show you that on Switch Dashboard, we've got our public and private dashboards. So when we're creating a dashboard, we can have dashboards only for us, or we can make them public so everyone in the practice can see them. So here I've got my private dashboard, which is just my dashboard. And that's going to show me the work that I've got. A number of widgets that I can add in here. For now, I've just got a task assigned to me and a jobs assigned to me widget that just highlights key information and tasks that need to be completed, and more importantly, those that are overdue, which we've got showing here. So the first one of those, the one at the bottom for Astra, so this is to send a year-end reminder to that client. Now, I know that as part of Communication Center, those year-end reminders are automatically generated. So something's obviously not quite happened for that to be sent out and to update the job. So I'm just going to have a quick look at this client. So I'm going to pop into Communication Center, and I go to my message activity, and I'm going to pop to my pending queue. So this is where I know that my automatic emails are generated, and I can see here I have got an email for Astra that's set for requesting of records for accounts, but it's showing as failed. It hasn't gone out. So I'm just going to have a quick look. And I wonder, just from here, I haven't got a from, and I wonder whether there was maybe just an issue with the sending of the email. So I just select from, I have a quick look through, so I can again just verify the content. This all looks okay. So I'm going to send that out, and hopefully this time, so that has now been sent. So obviously just slight issue previously that hasn't gone, but it was great that I had an item on my dashboard, so I could quickly check that, and that's now allowed me to clear that. And if I pop back to my dashboard, we should hopefully see that that's then dropped off my list. So as part of our automation and automatic requesting of records, as soon as I've sent that email, then the status on the job is then updated, or sorry, the status on the task within that job is updated, and that clears the task from my list. So the next two that I've got here are for the same client. So this is to send the accounts to the client for signing and then receiving them back and progressing the job from there. With this job, I can see the actual job is overdue, not just the tasks. We see here 3 limited. So I'm just going to pop in, because this is a little bit more worrying that the job itself is overdue and not just the task. I'm going to pop to active work, and I'm just going to check the job. So I can see here, okay, my deadline is the end of the month. So I have got a few days, 23rd today. I have got a few days where I can get this work completed, but I do need to get these accounts off to the client to sign pretty quickly. So straight from the client record. So my mouse is just a little bit sensitive. So straight from the client record, I'm going to go into accounts production. I've got my period, and I'm going to open my accounts. Okay, I'm going to jump to my reports and my financial statements. And I can see here I've got a couple of errors, so I just need to check them quickly, just to make sure there's no reason we shouldn't send these to the client, which there isn't. It's just about the date of signing. They've obviously not signed them yet. So we're just going to pop back into the financial statements, and we're going to send these to them for signing. So we're going to select to add them to an eSign envelope. We're going to ignore the check and finish because we just confirmed we're happy with that. I'm just going to pop something in. Again, the envelope name is important. That's going to go through to the client. I'm just popping some basic details in here just for the demonstration. And I'm going to add an open. So we saw with the engagement letter, we had our envelope that was created that we could send the engagement letter from. Slight difference here. So I'm going to pop into our recipients and we're going to select the director as a signer. Slight difference here is this is pretty urgent. We do want this to send a reminder within a day if they haven't actioned that. So slight difference in terms of the reminder. Also, because we've allocated this envelope or the accounts to this envelope from within accounts production, this has already added in the document for us. And again, we're just going to scroll down to the signing area. As I mentioned before, we could have added ourselves in as a watcher as well, but just for demonstration, again, I'm going to pop in the signature and the date. I'm going to jump down to check and finish. Again, everything's been done, and we're going to send that envelope. And hopefully, so envelope has been successfully sent. And we're going to pop back to our dashboard, and we can see, again, by sending that set of accounts electronically to the client for signing, that's then completed that task within my job. I've still got the fact that I need to receive those signed documents back, or the financial statements back signed. So this is the point where I'm going to show and pretend that I'm the client that's just received those documents. So I'm going to pop back into our email account again. So hopefully, here we go. So we've got the document to sign. So this was where I mentioned the name of the envelope. So this is obviously important that it's appropriately named at this stage. I'm going to click to sign. And I'm going to just quickly pop in. So there are a few choices. I think it's about Jonathan. And we're going to pop a date in and confirm, and then submit that document. So really quick and simple. From a client's perspective, they could do this from a mobile phone, from their tablet. So there generally should be no kind of reason that this couldn't get signed quickly, even if they were on holiday or out and about, if it was something that they knew they had to do. So that's then been signed. We're going to jump back into TaxCalc. We can see here that that's not updated the status at this stage, but we're going to pop into our envelope. So if I had waited maybe 5-10 minutes, we have an automatic process that does run through and poll for the status of our envelopes. We don't want to wait here for 5-10 minutes, so I'm just going to manually check the status. That's then shown that the envelope has completed, so that would happen automatically if you did leave that long enough. And then going to pop back into our dashboard. And again, as part of the receiving of that signed document, we can see that that stage of the job, that task, has now been completed as well. So we can see the job here is still open. So I'm going to pop into the job and select Update Job. So what I'm not going to do for the demonstration today is physically submit those set of accounts to Companies House, but we have now had them back signed. And so we're happy to submit them. We'd go through that process. As part of submission through to Companies House, there is an automation that will update the task or a task within your job as well. If that happens to be the last task, then that would then complete the job. In my template that I've got here, I've actually got a final contact with a client. It's not submission that's the final task. So at this stage, I would then update that particular task, and then the job would then be complete. So I'm just going to go through, and we'll fast forward a day or so, and we assume we have got ahead of the deadline, and we're happy we've completed that job. And just to show that then drops off our list. So it was 9 o'clock. Obviously, I needed to onboard my client. I needed to check the work that I've got, make sure I was on top of everything. Within a few hours, I'm now up and running. I'm happy I'm on top of my work. I've got my client onboarded. And I can see here I've got some records received from Astra, and I could then get forward and start working on my next job for my next client. So as I mentioned, hopefully that's covered a good breadth of your day-to-day processing through practice management. We've covered Document Manager, eSign Centre, Communication Centre, Practice Manager and Practice Manager Plus. So there's lots of different options that we've got there to help us along the way. What I wanted to do just to finish off, there's a couple of bits that I touched on through client creation at the beginning, which were about using Datamine and custom fields. And I know it's quite a common question we get from people that we speak to, that they don't know that those options are necessarily there. So I just wanted to jump into those quickly just to end things off. So I'm going to pop into Admin Centre. I'm going to pop to Practice Manager and Customise Practice Manager. And we can see down here, we've got Datamine and custom fields. that's the first thing, just to recognise that they're in Admin Centre for Practice Manager. And we're going to pop to our custom fields, and we can see the custom fields that we've added in for previous accountant that we've already previously used. We've got one there for passport number. We've also got industry and score. So you could basically create these custom fields for anything you wanted to. I'm going to show you those in a second in terms of Datamine and how we could use those within the system. But all we would do is pop into create field. You would just add in the name, and you've got a choice there of text, number, date, and so on. So for previous accountant, I obviously had a selection of those. So I had a tick box option and a text field. And then choose the client types that they relate to and where you'd want that field to appear on the client record. So really quick and simple to do. And like I said, there's no real limit on what you want to use or may want to use those for. Then I'm going to pop into Datamine. So I mentioned about the data mining options that we have, especially for things like bookkeeping provider. So if we wanted to create that, then we could come into Create Datamine, click on Add Condition, choose Bookkeeping Software. I think we had Excel, didn't we? So we chose Excel. We click Save. And then we could say all of our clients who are using Excel. Again, you could name that however you wanted to. So save and close, and that would then allow us to use that data mine either through client records, through reports, or through mailing lists used in Communication Centre to try and target those clients and find those clients specifically for doing actions for. So again, really quick and simple. You can create these through the system. It doesn't have to be done in admin, but by doing it in admin, it allows everybody to have access to them through various places in the software. So we're just then going to quickly jump back to Practice Manager and just show you how a couple of those are used. So if we pop down to Use Datamine and we go to Load, we can see the same options that I just mentioned. So we can run a Datamine individually, but if we do have them saved, then we could pick them from here. So I'm just going to choose Martin's client. So this you saw on the client that I created right at the beginning. I chose Portfolio Manager as myself. So I'm just going to choose Use and then Run. And this gives me all of my clients. So we see the new client that I created, but also the 3 other clients that I've got. Hopefully you would have more clients under your portfolio. Obviously for the demonstration, we've just got these 3 clients here that I'm allocated to as the client manager. It just allows us to filter that list really quickly. So if we wanted to do something slightly different, so those that are all enrolled for MTD, again, we could do this ad hoc. It doesn't have to be that it's a data mine set up in admin. So are they enrolled for MTD? Yes. And if we run, then that would give us a list of clients that are enrolled for MTD. So at this stage, obviously my list is blank. We know that MTD, especially for VAT, is obviously apt. So there's maybe something there that we need to do with the settings within the clients themselves. Okay, and then lastly, I'm going to pop down to Use Datamine. Just a new condition that we've added into our summer release, which is due out shortly. And this is a condition for birthdays. So if we pop in, so non-compliant, something that might be kind of slightly more personable to your clients, a way that you could use Communication Centre to keep up your client relationships and try and make sure that you're communicating with them as often as possible. We could create a data mine here and say, show me all of the clients with a birthday in May. And then we could run that, and that will give me the clients with the birthdays in May. And what we could then do in Communication Centre is use that data mine for a mailing list, and we could then send that those clients who have those birthdays an email, for example, as a birthday email with the information and maybe a happy birthday message every month if you wanted to, or every so often, depending on how you wanted to manage that. Okay, so I think that is the demonstration done. That's everything we were going to cover. So what we would like to, hopefully that you've been able to see a good overview of practice management. I touched on earlier the products that we've covered and how each of those products can work for you. Each of the tools that we have that I've mentioned are licensed individually. So should your priorities be client communication, then you may not need a tool for deadline management or vice versa. And it's really down to you and about choice and what you need. And those options that we have there give you the opportunity to decide what's important to you. Just to end the webinar today, we just got one final poll that we'd like to get you to answer. So this poll that we have is just quite simply, would you be interested in a one-to-one practice management consultation with one of our experts? And simple answers, so yes or no. So we'll let that run just for a few seconds. If you can answer that, that would be great. As I mentioned just at the start of the webinar, my colleague Dean has been monitoring the questions. So again, if we haven't been able to get around to some of those, please don't worry, we will follow those up as soon as we can. But if you do have anything else that you would like to know, product related, then please do contact our sales team. Sales team can be contacted on sales@taxcalc.com or by telephone on 0345 5190 883. Recording of the webinar will be shared, but you will have access to the live recording straight after the event. The recording that we follow up with is just a slightly edited version. And that is the end of the webinar. Thank you for joining me today, and I hope you have a good rest of your day.